Hi, today in this tutorial we're going to look at data types in the PHP programming language. So in the previous tutorial we looked at how to create and use variables. We looked at two data types briefly, strings and integers. And this tutorial we're going to look at more data types and a little bit more detail. Um, so we have a few different data types that we can use in PHP. We have strings. Okay, so I'm just going to add some comments here. So we have strings, which are letters, numbers, and other characters that you see on the keyboard. Okay, and those are always enclosed inside quotation marks. So as an example here, I'm going to create a string variable, and so I'm going to give it a name. And so this string variable is going to be called name equals Batman. And end that with a semicolon. So here I've just created a variable. It's called name, and I've assigned a value to it. It's a string value because it's inside quotation marks, and it's called Batman. So just a comment here to explain what type of variable we're working with here. Okay, now with variables and data types in PHP, when you assign a variable, when you assign a value to a variable, PHP will figure out what type of data you're working with. So you don't need to specify what type of data type a variable contains when you declare a variable, because PHP will figure it out based on what you assign to the variable. So for example, if you place text in quotation marks after the equals sign, then PHP will figure out that this is a string. If you put a number after a variable name outside quotation marks, then PHP will figure out that it's a number, an integer. Okay, so you don't need to actually specify what the data type is, unlike some other programming languages like C Sharp or several other languages where you need to specify what type of data type you are working with. All right, so this is a string. The next type of next data type is integer. So integers are numbers, they're whole numbers. They can be positive or negative, but they have to be a whole number, so no decimal places. Okay, so I'm going to create an integer here. All right, so to create an integer, I've got to give it a name. So $, and for this integer, it's going to be an age value. So I'm going to put $age equals 25, and that with the semicolon, and just put a comment here to explain integers. So integers are numbers, actually whole numbers, whole positive or negative numbers, no decimal places. Okay, so that is an integer. So I have not put that inside quotation marks like this string. It's a number, it's a whole number, so PHP will figure out that this is an integer and will treat it as an integer. And it's also got some different color coding there as well, some different syntax highlighting. A float is a real number. So a float is a number with a decimal place, also known as a real number. It can be positive or negative. So something like 34.5 or 23.49621 or minus 15.8 or something like that. So positive or negative numbers and can have decimal places. So for example, $, I know, num equals 30.256. Okay, so floats are positive or negative real numbers. Okay, can have decimal places. All right, so that's a float. The next type of variable is Boolean. And a Boolean can store only one of two possible values, true or false. So it can only be one of those values. It can be true or it can be false. It can't be both at the same time, and it can't be anything else. So a boolean can just be assigned something like so my boolean equals true. Okay, so boolean only two possible values, true or false. Okay, that's boolean. Another special data type is called null, which it basically means nothing. So null means nothing. It doesn't mean zero, because zero is still a number, it's still a value. Null means no value or nothing. So I could create a new variable here. I'll just call it my variable, and I'm going to make that equal to null. All right, so this is a null data type. It's a special data type. So it means no value or nothing. All right, we'll work with that in just a moment. So what we could do, just make a bit more space here, we can echo out these different variables. So I could say echo $name, comma, $age, comma, $num, comma, and it doesn't matter whether you put a space there or not with the before and after the commas, but I just like to space things out so I can see them clearly. $my boolean and $my variable, and that line with a semicolon. Alright, so save that, and if I refresh it, we get Batman, then we get 25, then we get 30.2561. Okay, sorry, 0.256. The 1 there represents this Boolean value, which is true. So what we notice there, if I just move this over a little bit, so we can see what actually happens when we run this code. I've got $name, which is equal to Batman. So I've got echo $name, all right, so we can see Batman there. Then I've got $age, which is equal to 25, so that's the value assigned to age. So we see 25 there, and then I've got $num, which is the float here, 30.256. So we've got 30.256, and there's no spaces between any of these values. We're just using the echo statement just to spit them all out. And then I've got 1 here. So after num, I have $my boolean, and my boolean has been assigned a value of true. All right, can only be true or false. So true is represented by a 1. If I change true to false, save that and refresh the page, we get nothing. So 1 represents true. Okay. What I'll do is just change that back to true. And you'll notice that even though I put my variable in this echo statement, there's nothing there after after everything else. So I've got Batman 25, then I've got 30.256, and then I've got 1, which represents true. But because my variable is null, which means nothing or no value, there's no value there to display. All right. What we could do is we could add some spaces here. All right, so we could add some string spaces in between here if we wanted. And just to clear things up a little bit. All right, so save and refresh. All right, we've got some spaces between all of these values here. What we can also do, which I didn't mention in one of the other tutorials, is that we could add, I did mention that you can add HTML tags. So if you're not sure how to do that, go back to that tutorial. But one HTML tag that you can add is the break tag, which will put things on a new line. So it will create a new line. So rather than separating these values here in the echo statement with a space, we can actually add a new line or a break. So if we refresh, we get everything on a new line there. All right. Or we could just display these all in separate echo statements. But if we did that, they'd still all come out on the same line. All right. So that's what we've done. We've worked with a few different data types there, and we're displaying these data types on the screen as well, so in an echo statement. Okay, so what we can actually do is check whether this variable is null, so whether it's got a null value or no value. So what we could do is have an echo statement, and we could say is underscore null, and then put in the name of that variable, my variable. Okay, so if we save that and refresh, we get a 1 there, meaning true. So it returns true that yes, my variable is null. Okay, we could put an exclamation mark before is null, save, refresh, and that returns false. So we get nothing there. So it's by putting in an exclamation mark, we're saying we're checking if it is not null, but it is null. So we've got a null value here. All right, so that here we've got, just to sum that up, we've got strings, we've got integers, floats or real numbers, we've got booleans, which can be either true or false, and we've got the special data type of null. So those are the different data types that we'll be working with in these tutorials. And that's all for this tutorial. Thanks for watching.